Have you ever been caught by the tide at the beach? That moment when the wave hits disorients you, water in your mouth and throat, unsure of which way is up or down. Your situation starts to shift from analytical coldness to raw desperation. When water splashes your face and your eyes burn, but you lack the strength or clarity to stop flailing and wipe your salty face. They say that facing the fear of death makes your life flash before your eyes, but in that moment, the world disappears and you only think about the second in front of you. And the next one. And the next one. You no longer feel your heart, but you feel the heat of your dry throat going into your chest, as if flames were propelling the meat machine determined to return to shore. You step on the sand again, dragging water, splashing and managing to bring your body to the warmth of the dry sand, and you rest grateful. The depiction of the tragedy or miracle of the Andes in the new Netflix film Society of the Snow, directed by J.A Bayona, may not seem anything like a common beach accident, but the director's vision of human behavior, reactions, suffering, fear, and physical and psychological superhuman strength to hold on life do capture the instinct, the sensitivity of survival. It's not just about empathizing with those people, you also feel their deepest fear and you're reminded of the emptiness in your heart in the face of death. Because the film is all about representing reactions, all about portraying the grief of defeat and hopelessness, and all about the sweet and warm taste of relief from suffering, and ultimately about questioning the usefulness of that suffering. Why did I live through this? What sense does it make to have suffered and lost so much? Bayona, the director, possesses the power of an elastic band. Yes, that material that changes its shape, expands, contracts, and with enough force, it breaks. It's a power every storyteller wields with authority, but only the best, only those who understand the deepest emotional intricacies of the experience they are telling and the medium they are using can use the power of the elastic band with as much precision as Bayona shows us in this movie, with his mastery of the camera, pacing, suspense, and the emotional waves, a perfect elastic band. The film starts from the silence over the mountain, the entity that will observe the characters in this event, almost being a postulate of the hierarchies of our world. First the planet, its forces, then the humans and their conflicts, and how these forces do not necessarily have a direct relation, but only a reaction between them. Numa's voice breaks the silence of the wide panorama, a human attempting to decipher the meaning of the event.
Unos dicen que fue una tragedia, otros hablan de un milagro. ¿Qué pasó realmente? La respuesta está en la montaña.
The film, through the narrator, positions itself as an experience shaped by memory and meaning. It takes a stance by strictly aligning itself with the perspective of remembrance and experience, and this reveals the main premise of the film precisely in the form of that question: what does such an event mean in someone's life? How do we process trauma that we survived, but in the loss of so much? The story and the way it's told seeks to find the answer to this question with the representation of violence, pain, suffering, courage, hope, despair. The narrative thread of the story is merely a quest for the answer, a humanistic and intimate perspective that not only seeks a voyeuristic experience in other suffering, but delves deeply into the emotions of the ones presenting this story, not only in a recreated fiction, but in the memory that this footage represents, the memory of survival. Bayona swiftly opens his narrative thread, introducing his protagonists with efficiency and practicality, in a sequence unified by the idea of an impending journey. A rugby team, disunified by the individual aspirations of some members, raises money to rent a plane, leading us to a church that serves as a backdrop for the characters' values and ideologies. This establishes the context and worldview under which the characters operate, and not just any character, but Numa, our narrator. He's presented as an almost accidental consequence, a guest on this journey with no responsibility to fulfill it, much like many on that plane. In the first few minutes, Bayona not only builds a plot of events and characters that he will later develop, but also sets a tone, a gut feeling called irony. Dramatic irony is a storytelling device that plays with what the audience already knows. The audience knows this journey will go wrong, and with each switch and turn that allows this journey to happen, the audience suffers and anxiously anticipates. Bayona hastens the first act of the film with just 15 minutes of irony, of a stained piece that you know will die and you wish to stop watching in time. Through Numa's voiceover, he establishes ages, sets contexts, and in its pacing, it doesn't want you to know the characters yet. Not enough. He wants you to place yourself among them as an equal who was once this young, or maybe is this young. He wants you to savor the anxious excitement of their youth and their flaming expectation to discover the world. You can see a sparkle in their eyes. The elastic band begins to stretch very quickly, aggressively cutting the distance between our ironic distress and the inevitable truth. The plane crash scene is a cinematic achievement. For most of this scene, he places us in Numa's perspective, only alternating to reactions of the passengers and a few wide shots of the exterior. The movie doesn't want you to have a proper spatial orientation. It seeks the confusion of the point of view, trapping us in the plane. The desperation of the plane's authorities, the fast approaching fog, and the mountain fading in front of Numa's eyes are enough to paralyze the muscles. Bayona stretches the band as much as he can, extends the tension, fear, desperation, reaction, and finally lingers with the hope of the calm of salvation, presenting hope and despair, dancing, only to break the band for the first time. The way Bayona chooses to extend the suspense in this scene is revealing, cause it sets the emotional and structural pattern of the script. A game between light and darkness, from the blinding flash to the void, as we will see later in the story. The aftermath of the accident is a relentless ringing after a loud crash, a shock represented in the grating sound of the plane's metal that feels painful and violent. Extremely close shots are used inside the plane, an intimate approach to suffering, where the luck of having survived is nowhere to be seen. During the night, Bayona introduces an important color concept for the rest of the film, related to the levels of hope and despair in the story, and the relation between victory and defeat, warmth and coldness. The sun, as hot and orange as it enters through the window, almost making you feel its warmth, represents the victory of surviving the night and the first moment when the characters can actually realize they survived a plane crash. This use of warmth against the cold palette of the Andes is fundamental in the movie and represents a journey, the narrative structure and the emotional structure. The director recently shared this image on his Twitter, explaining precisely this color structure, parting from the warmth of the adventure to Chile, raining darkness throughout the knot of the film's second act, and allowing warmth to return once they have successfully come back from the mountain, as even the Andean sun feels cold. The use of color and the chromatic palette may seem simple, but the results are effective in the audience. The warm temperatures not only provide hope for the victory of a new day, but also the hope that resides in memory, when the coldness of the present is interrupted only by the warmth of the flashback of the memory. As a viewer, you're so conditioned to the cold that you feel the warmth of those images every time they appear on screen. When the film addresses the most controversial aspect of this historical anecdote, which is the consumption of human flesh to survive in the desolate ice, it presents the dilemma and the impact of the decision very well, along with its ramifications. From the beginning, it establishes Numa as a Catholic, which defines his values and complicates the decision to ingest human flesh. The entire sequence related to this topic is grounded effectively with the dramatic exchange of sharp dialogues, a moral conflict between the characters. This is supported by the narrative's close-to-chronicle style, showing respect for the people as they pass away, giving them names and significance within the story. Even the scale of the text becomes devastating with such a sad meaning as death. This achieves a good representation of the harshness of the decisions made on that mountain. There is no morbid approach, but rather a sensitive one, to replicate or get close to the real feelings that brings these individuals together as a community, where the most difficult decision and actions had to be taken by the strongest to help everyone. This exchange of conflicts, rather than separating the group, ends up uniting them later. Even though in this scene opposing forces seem to be established, such as the looks between Numa and the Strauch cousins, it is actually a planting for Numa's arc, which will take different turns later on. The sequence extends to the moment when they learn they will not be rescued, a scene with a disturbing visual approach, once again returning to the intimacy of reaction and closeness. Using a panoramic lens, Bayona shoots his actors very closely, reacting to their doom, desperate, losing all composure, leaving them slowly in the distance of the white landscape, in juxtaposition to the everyday sound of the city's radio. The second act respects the story intervals of light and darkness, the avalanche contrasting with the celebration of persistence, darkness being destroyed once again by the warmth of light, the return of perseverance to escape, births and deaths of the human spirit, like the founding of hope in the radio and the defeat of the radio not working. Is in this second act that Numa and the others begin to try to answer the film's central question: what is happening on the mountain? What sense or meaning are we finding? They realize they must find a unique meaning tied to the rules of the snow. This dialogue between Numa and Arturo about the god he has found in the mountain, it's crucial because it largely sustains the essence of the movie's title. A society is defined by its own rules, based on its community and place of residence. The mountain society can no longer find meaning in the rules of the outside world. They must find it in the snow, the God you find in the church, whom you visit every Sunday with a full stomach and your coat under your arm, makes no sense in the mountain cold. The sense of the mountain is found in the humanity they share, in the hope they give each other to endure, and in the atrocities they must commit to keep on living. Surviving helps everyone, because everyone is the sum and the answer to why they survived. By accepting to live and follow the rules of the society, to eat and live, he is helping everyone. However, Numa is injured, and slowly the story reveals that he won't leave the mountain. Our narrator is not someone sitting in a warm chair now, with ambient light illuminating the wrinkles on his face while watching his family. The narrator died in the mountain.
Me llamo Numa. Morí el 11 de diciembre de 1972, mientras dormía.
The movie, not content with honoring the memory of those who died through the sensitivity of the portrait of their suffering, the closeness to the experience of survival, and what it entails physically, psychologically, and ideologically, reveals now that its full weight is on a person who is no longer here. The heart of this society is in Numa's memory and his importance to the group. Numa is the answer for those who remained alive. In a last loss of hope, where darkness seems permanent as the radio fails, what else is there to do other than facing the endless cold and the unknown expanse of the mountains? A journey with no return ticket. Numa touches Roberto with his last warmth to give him the hope he needs. The script perfectly measured its emotional turns and determined its progress in a chain. The end of Numa's arc in which he gives his life to the society, contradicting his initial response to cannibalism, and by this finding a new meaning to the god of his past ways, initiates the actions of his friends to finally escape. The scene is beautiful, dominated by silence, because Numa is no longer there. He speaks to them through the words of memory, of legacy. While we follow his words touching his companions, Bayona plays with the expectation of the content of the paper and finishes the scene with a shot that seems to break the fourth wall. Nando hands us the letter and looks us in the eye, finally revealing the content on the paper.
Salimos mañana.
And so the final act of the film begins, the last confrontation with the ice titan that are the Andes, the final attempt, giving it their all in case it fails. And so the story adds one last negative twist to stretch the narrative band as much as possible, to make us rise from our seats one last time in despair. At the top of the ice wall, there is nothing but a sea of identical walls. As if presenting a colossal monster, the panoramic shot introduces the rest of the Andes. Although this scene in the end is actually beautiful, Nando convinces himself that they have to be able to make that last journey into the valley, that there must be an exit way ahead. The scene is shot from an interesting point of view. While it should spatially lay out what they would have to cover by foot to escape the Andes, the camera never shows the mountains as Nando explains his plan. It doesn't visualize his ideas so that we know how much is left. Instead, we see this extremely tight shot reverse shot while Nando convinces Roberto. The most close and intimate conversation in the movie. The reason is that the important thing is not how much valley and mountains are left, but how much hope is left inside these two boys. At a decisive moment in the conversation, Nando points to a mountain we don't see and asks Roberto if he sees it. That's the point they have to reach to escape. Roberto doesn't even look at it, but he affirms that he sees it. Because Roberto isn't believing in the distance. He doesn't see the destination, but the hope in front of him. And that ends up being a much greater driving force than anything else, all conveyed through the grammar of the camera, the scale of the shot, and the decision of what to show in frame and what not to show. And this is how Bayona pushes the maximum elasticity of the narrative, so skilled that even in the final sections of the film, seemingly predictable, he can still surprise us. The introduction of their savior is nothing but a subversion in the scales of twists. First, he shows us the two boys running out of food, getting sick from it, just to surprise us with a small hope, only to use that small turn to distract us from the next twist and affect us even more, from the lizard to salvation. For this section of the film, the sun returns, warmer, hotter, in a parallel montage where they show the world reacting at the discovery of Nando and Roberto, mobilizing at great speed, cutting to the calm of the mountain and the slow passage of time. But finally, after knowing that the world is finally coming to the rescue, the sun hits them with the same warmth as Fernando and Roberto down there. The sensitivities of suffering were a great empathizing tool, but now Bayona introduces details about how they receive victory. After 70 days being a society with its rules and unique priorities of the mountain, gradually they return to thinking as they did before, combing their hair, brushing their teeth. Small details of hope for reintegration, small but emotionally devastating. The dead will also return to the world as memories, reminders, proof that they were alive. Below the mountain, Roberto abandons the society by burying what was once food, now treated like a sacred body that must be buried with respect in the ground. The last ones to be introduced on screen with a name and surname are the ones who lived, because they bring everyone back, even if only in their memory, in their gaze. And as the sound of propellers echoes in the mountain, Bayona breaks the narrative elastic band one last time. The scene is mirroring the moment they lost hope when they saw their world die in the mountain, Now, they see it come back to life again. The final descent of the curve of this tale is beautiful. All of previous Bayona's great endings feel like when you stop swimming in the sea. You're exhausted but liberated. The living return to the world, but they are still unsure of the answer to the question posed by the film. Is this a miracle or a tragedy?
Se hizo el milagro.
Qué milagro, mamá. Qué milagro.
What sense does it make for us to have come back, to have lived? The final shots are a beautifully blurred transition of images and sounds. We move from the warmth of the present to the cold of the mountain. Sounds and cuts fade between the hospital and the snow. Life and the memory of trauma coexist in a single blur, as they will for these survivors for the rest of their lives. Sounds and sensations they will never forget. You cannot be alive without thinking about those who are not with you. And Numa, as he narrates, suggests the answer to the question of the premise, the one he found before dying in peace, the memory of that society and who they all were in the mountain. The meaning of death is found in life and memory, not in fate, not in destiny, not in the forces you fear. The meaning of what happened in the mountain is in the human interpretation of trauma and the value you extract from it. Perceive the memories, remember them. That is the truth of the mountain, the one they have to tell the world. The film is a beautiful homage to that idea. The value of what we lost is only in those who remain and in those who can share that memory, photo by photo, story by story, screen by screen.